Hello there. Welcome to a very special live, for those of you watching right now, Bladtcast 497. Oh my goodness. I am Christian Bladt. Perhaps you know me because I was the one who made the Kessel Run in 10 parsecs, joined by a man voted most likely to shoot Bib Fortuna, Ryan Nilsen. How are you, sir?
Most likely. I'm doing well. How are you? Ryan Nilsen, a fellow person in the entertainment industry, post-production. So hyped to talk Star Wars. It's been a minute, Christian Bladt.
It has been a minute. It's been several minutes. And is that a Porkins action figure?
I think we have Porkins on the show.
It is a Porkins bust. It is a man who I see myself every time he appeared on the screen.
Well, I'm glad you say that because my intro for you was indeed going to be a man who can always stay on target. Stay on target, the one, the only Count Eric Connor. And we will see if we get an opportunity to be joined by some of our other friends. But for right now, if I was going to talk Star Wars, I would, of course, need to assemble this triumvirate that includes two people from the first state. Yes, both Eric and Ryan are from the state of Delaware.
No way.
Delaware strong.
Delaware strong. And we also got this huge poster of Ewan McGregor.
Yes.
Which he looks like he's in a place as desolate as Delaware. I didn't know you were from Delaware. This was a surprise. I didn't expect to kick off.
I saved it for the air. Yeah, he was trying to make small talk before we started. And I'm like, no.
No, anyone from Delaware, when they meet someone else from Delaware, I've compared it to a unicorn meeting like another unicorn. or a Pegasus.
You're Ben Kenobi. Yeah.
Oh, I want them to mean old Ben. Yes, Wilmington, Delaware.
Before you guys devolve this conversation into moves that the Sixers should make in the offseason, I feel like we should dive right in to the 6-episode Disney Plus series of Kenobi. We are going to speak about it in all the spoilers, and it was a show that I watched in a way a lot of people didn't. I actually watched all 6 of them after it had premiered. And that was just due to bad logistics. I was flying back from New York, and I just didn't. I thought that I had downloaded the first 2 episodes, hadn't. So then, just by the time I caught up, there had already been 4 or 5 of them. So I was like, great, I'll just do it all at once.
Crazy.
I really enjoyed it, and I think that there are some people that feel very differently about it than that. I actually don't know how much you guys feel about it as a whole. But I think that there's a lot of great stuff about it. And I don't know about you, Ryan. I was not in love with Book of Boba Fett the way I wanted to be. This certainly was a nice chaser to that because that I was just overall disappointed. Stuff I liked during that, mostly when it turned into episodes of The Mandalorian, but that's neither here nor there. But to have Ewan McGregor back, I love Trainspotting too. So anytime you bring Ewan McGregor back as previous characters that I already liked seeing him play, I am all in. But overall thoughts, Ryan, I will let you go first.
I mean, well, you brought up Book of Boba Fett. Like, I think it's important to paint the context and the landscape of the Disney Plus, Star Wars, or just Star Wars in general right now. Walking into this show as a big fan because we're coming right off of Boba Fett, like you were saying, and that was a show I think I was pretty disappointed by, but I was also very entertained by. Like I was still dialing in each week, like maybe it'll be this one, maybe it'll be this one, and there were still a lot of things I liked about it, like all Star Wars. But as a whole, as like an entire package, I was a little disappointed with that. It wasn't the sum of its parts, really, and I think like walking into this show, I gotta be honest, I don't think I've ever had higher expectations for a TV show. Like I was so amped for this as like growing up with the prequels, loving Ewan McGregor, being the biggest Deborah Chow fan on earth. Like she's done episodes. I'm a big Better Call Saul fan. She did one of the best episodes of that show. Her episodes of Mandalorian were great. I think she's just like an amazing visionary. This show had every ingredient. Like walking in, just if I was looking at this like it was, like an NFL team, it had the perfect coach, the perfect quarterback, the star. Like you're bringing Hayden back. You're kidding me. Like this was the most exciting Star Wars thing, and probably since Force Awakens, I'd say, where I was just like, this could be really special. And my overall thoughts is, I don't think this show was the masterpiece I was hoping it be. However, along the ride, I kind of was able to warp what the show was. I'm like, okay, this is what they're doing with it. And I was still very satisfied, particularly by the finale, which I think is Star Wars has always been pretty great with finales, even with like seasons or shows, like in the animated stuff and everything. This one was no exception. This might have been like the best hour of Star Wars we've had in a few years. Those are my overall thoughts.
Yeah, I think that especially the finale, I would say, as if you isolate that as an hour, it's amongst the best that there's been in really the last 35 years. It's like even going back to the prequels as a standalone hour. Obviously, I think in general people are in agreement about Rogue One. People are generally in agreement about the 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. So this was really up there. But yeah, I did. There, like I said, there was a lot that I enjoyed about the show. Eric, overall, big thoughts.
It's interesting. Like, all right, Mandalorian kind of works because I think Mandalorian works because it figured out how to be a TV show. Mandalorian, it's like The Fugitive a million years ago. It's like The Incredible Hulk when Christian and I were young, and Ryan may have still had a tail. I think he might have been young, might have still been, swimming around there. But I think like Mandalorian really works because it is really conceived of as pure TV. What makes it work is what makes TV work in some ways. And then Boba Fett was this weird formless thing. The fact that it sort of left to become Mandalorian for like 2 episodes and came back, like Boba Fett, it's like they never really had their arms around. Kenobi, it's interesting because Kenobi, I think, is sort of like a bit of column A, a bit of column B. Those last 2 episodes, you will not hear me say anything bad about, even though my cousin gave me a good talking to about some of the logic holes, which I'll let him keep those for himself. But he made a strong case. He went to MIT. He's a smart guy.
He's from Maryland, though, not from Delaware.
Yeah. Well, that's true. He's from New York, right? So he's not pure.
Oh, well, then clearly, if he's from New York, he doesn't know anything.
He's not pure uncut Delaware gold like Ryan and myself. But those last 2 episodes, like the first 4, I never was bored. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. I did love little Leia. I think she was like baby Grogu. She was so well cast and added real heart and something very specific to that. But those last 2 episodes were tremendous. And that would have been a great movie.
Yeah. And let's, of course, give credit to the young actress. Vivian Lyra Blair is her name. And yes, she was phenomenal. I was talking to Eric about this last night. There's no real ability to arrive at a verdict for young Luke. He didn't stand out as being bad. It's just he looked like young he looked like young Jake Lloyd, and I think that's all they needed because of how little they actually did with him. He can run away, he can climb a ladder. So, but she was fantastic, and I think if she hadn't been, this would have been rough.
It was a good misdirection, right? Because we all would have assumed, oh yeah, it's gonna be about young Luke. It's like, nope, it's young Leia. And I'm like, that's really smart.
It's kind of amazing how they've pulled off some big twists like that. Like, I remember the first episode of Mandalorian ends with Grogu, and you're like, what? Like, how was
no idea. Right. That moment, it's the moment we all kind of fell in love with that show.
But in the Mandalorian season 2, it felt, we might have our finger on the pulse more than other people, but it felt like every single thing of it was leaked at one point, maybe aside from Luke. So
Luke was the one thing that they meant. Yeah, so Luke and Grogu, when we first met him. And this was a bit of a disappointing turn for social media, because I think with Spider-Man No Way Home, social media did such a great job of keeping their mouth shut. And like, yes, if you really dug around, things would be spoiled for you. But casual spoilers were back in fashion, like the night of the Kenobi premiere. I had no idea Princess Leia was in the show, and I didn't watch it that night. And then I found out, and then I was like, all right, well, I've already had that. And there were little things that came up. you know. And I was like, all right, so people aren't trying, and I'm not actually, this isn't like directed at you, Ryan, in case you thought it was. No, there was somebody that I knew that was like, I'm like, it wasn't even really like noon the next day, and they were writing about little Leia, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I had no
Yeah.
idea she was in the show, but I know now. Thanks.
I can't speak on like the day of it comes
Yeah.
out because we're just in a world where like it's probably gonna be out there. But I think like I will say like up to No Way Home, I felt again like a lot of that movie. We all knew like going in, we're probably gonna see like 3 Spider-Man.
Yeah, but we didn't know for sure that we were going to see them. You know, it was like until but I know what you're saying, and yes. So, but still, even knowing that we were going to get her in the show, I didn't realize it was going to be a young Leia story and not a young Luke story. Obviously, that's what would have made sense. So I do think that was definitely a nice surprise. And the scenes with Ewan McGregor and her were great. And look, I'm always happy to see Jimmy Smits. If they bring back, I know he died on NYPD Blue, but if they wanted to reboot that with his ghost, he could be a Force ghost. You want to do LA Law again? Great. But since I brought up Jimmy Smits, we're going to talk sort of about the show as a whole. But that was definitely a plot point where I'm like, okay, it's a good thing that Bail Organa didn't actually start the rebellion, because boy, he does not know how to leave a coded message. Just as like, well, I haven't heard from you in a while. I guess I'm going to have to go to Tatooine and find that boy. The one that Owen the farmer is looking after, Darth Vader's son, right? And I know it wasn't that, but it was just, I'm like, when we got that message, I'm like, oh, all right, somebody's going to hear this, aren't they?
Oh, you didn't think, oh, well, that will never come back up.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Oh, well,
they definitely telegraphed some of their moves, but look, stuff like that isn't going to make me not enjoy it. It was just like, I was just looking at him and I'm like, all right, Senator, I get it. So even a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, you could never really count on your senators. Thank you. That's my political content for the evening.
I was even gonna say, I like just mentioning the performances. Like, I think you have to like this whole show starts and ends with Ewan just killing it. Like, I really do. We're still fresh. We're really fresh off the show. It's only been a week. But there is a conversation to be made. Like, this might be the best performance in Star Wars. Like, he is this dude. Like, he carried the prequels. People were just like, maybe this is just a guy standing out in a lot of, it's easy to stand out when not everyone's, being directed the best. And I was like, man, like getting a director like Deborah Chow and like having moments where you're actually just cutting in on a guy's face. Like, there were so many moments throughout the show where it's just a close up and his eyes reacting. Like, there were episodes that started and ended with no dialogue. It was just him acting. And that was refreshing. Like, there's so little of that in Star Wars. I feel like it's a lot of Star Wars storytelling, like, relies a lot on the dialogue and the plot. And it's like, we are learning so much from his eyes. And he killed it. Like, he really brought it. This guy didn't phone it in. And same with Hayden. Like, a big thing I was like tweeting about, talking a lot about with people is, the biggest reason I was so hyped for the show was, Star Wars has had a lot of actors like lives, not ruined, but they've been just obliterated by their performance for whatever reason. And I think a lot of the time it's not their fault. And I think, that's the case with Hayden Christensen in the prequels. Like, I just don't know if the guy was directed that well. It's hard to act around nothing. And to have him get another chance all these years later, where the people that were kids that loved him growing up are now giving him the praise he deserves, and he killed it like he did. That was everything for me. Like, it really felt like unfinished business, and the show.
Right. I think that. When you're running lines and you're learning your sides and you have an exchange with, an incredibly talented actress, and you have to tell her that you don't like sand, there's only so much that you can do with it. And I agree, though. Eric, when we were talking about this last night, you made a point about getting to see Hayden Christensen in this show and sort of what the passage of time, you had some thoughts on that, right?
Yeah. I think sometimes, like Bon Jovi stuck around long enough that they began to be treated like a classic rock band on the level of Bruce, which I hate to tell you, as a fan of Bon Jovi, they just ain't. They just ain't. Hayden
The
Christensen.
Bruce. Hold on, we're like best friends now.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
Bruce is like my idol, man.
Well, of course,
Oh my
because you
God.
could you just
Yeah.
one state over, and there
Because
he
you
is.
guys are Jersey adjacent.
Yeah, right. We're
Yeah.
Jersey-ish.
Yeah,
Jersey-ish.
Jersey-ish. Yeah.
But I think Hayden Christensen, like you could see he's a much more confident performer. Like, and again, he's older, and that was part of like what he's a 40-year-old playing a 20-year-old. Well, we've now seen this a million times. Like, I'm sorry, like if you saw The Irishman, I mean that thing, like those digital artists, like we've never heard from them again. They had so much work to do to make those guys look young. Like they all died.
Let's not
Doing
forget
that with Last
an
Brush.
example near and dear to our heart, Eric. Private Parts. Howard Stern playing himself as a college student.
Oh, right. And he had that great line, which is like, "Hey, yeah, no, I know it's ridiculous. Get over it."
Yeah.
And I think he did have a gravitas to him. I read that they even had like it was a Darth Vader sort of like physical body movement coach. So to make sure that because you remember, like, I know he just had surgery. When you have surgery and they put on new legs, in my own experience, and a new head and whatever else, like it's hard to recover from that quick, I admit. But if you remember at the end of Revenge of the Sith, like he's
Right.
Yeah.
And then in this, he just looked, I don't know, he walked like a man, talked like a man. He finally felt, honestly, like the Anakin we wish we had,
Yeah.
and you could blame Lucas. You could blame Lucas, the writer, or the director. But in the end of it
you
all,
could blame any of the hats that he wore on the prequels. Yeah.
But in the end of it all, he's grown up. He's now 40-ish, or I think,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so something about living a life, having experiences he's had, acting in much more stuff. Like,
yeah,
there's just more to him now.
The sort of the flashback duel between Anakin and Kenobi was great. The first fight where Ben really got his Kenobi handed to him, that was a little tough to watch, but it was great filmmaking. It just I felt for poor Ben. And then the last fight, that's amongst the best lightsaber fights we've ever had. I can't say that it's the best just because it's the newest, but I mean that's that's like a top 3. I don't know if I'm overstating it, but
I think it is.
Just I think if he hadn't sliced open his helmet, it probably wouldn't have been as effective, But the fact that we saw him under there,
the rocks,
the rock. I know.
Come on, and he's just like pelting him with that. There were so many great moments in that fight, and the emotion was off the charts. I think a lot of people were surprised they had a fight in the third ep, and one thing I quickly realized watching this show, and then I've heard some people point it out online following it, is all 6 episodes mirror the original 6 movies, where like the first episode is him walking over like a young boy on Tatooine. That's Phantom Menace. In the second episode, he comes across a clone asking for money to attack the clones. In the third one, he fights him, but instead of Anakin being in the fire and the lava, it's Obi-Wan.
Right.
Fourth one, there's literal moments that are him in A New Hope. And the 5th was Empire with Reva and everything. And 6th was them fighting again. Like there's some really cool parallels and rhyming happening in the show.
I'm glad that you have that attention to detail, because I didn't think about it, but as you started saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's some very nice symmetry. And shout out to our pal in the chat, Dominicus Saxon. Vader was the Vader we've always needed, the one from the end of Rogue One. The pure evil Vader is the one. I mean, think of like when we meet him in A New Hope. That is definitely the Vader we should have had for this series. He doesn't need to have any doubts. He doesn't have any other designs than serving his master,
right,
and choking as many people as he can, which I don't blame him.
And also I want to bring up another notable third, which is Rocky the Third, because right in that one you needed to have Rocky get the ship kicked out of him by Clubber Lang in order for his comeback to actually have some real impact.
Right,
and so us watching Obi-Wan like totally get his ass handed to him. That was great. And it really was interesting because it was like Obi-Wan, everyone's like, oh, well, like I know like Last Jedi got a lot of, blowback because it's like, well, this isn't Luke we remember, but let's think about that. Like Yoda, when we first meet him, he doesn't want anything to do with the Force initially. He's playing mind games with Luke, like this role playing. Maybe this was his fetish. I don't know. Where he's just like, not Yoda. I might not be. It's like, why are you being such a dick? Like, clearly this is a Jedi who needs some learning and help him out. But Yoda was like that. Obi-Wan was like that. I mean, in the original New Hope. So that idea of the Jedi constantly dealing with the fact that like their own doubt, like these are people that it's like a religion. They're pious and they believe in this higher power. But you also have these characters who are having crises of faith. That happens repeatedly in the Star Wars lore. Yeah. And so that was Obi-Wan. And so the fact that to use the Force well, as we all know, it's like your head's got to be in the game, and his head clear was not, or maybe it's his heart was not yet.
Right. And he's calling out to Qui-Gon like every episode.
Yeah, and Qui-Gon ain't calling him back. He's ghosted him.
He's not calling him back.
Wow.
There's so many. I feel like I don't know how we want to jump around here, but
just jump wherever you feel like the conversation needs to go.
Well, I'll say this: they dropped the first two the weekend of Star Wars Celebration, and to open with a superbly well edited recap of the prequels, like I threw that on just to like during a workout. I was getting amped.
And I did want to mention that actually, that boy, I needed that. Because I've seen the prequels. There are portions thereof that I've seen more than once, but I saw those theatrically. I think Phantom Menace I saw 3 times, and then I don't think any of the other ones I saw more than once in the theater. So it had been a very long time since
you didn't see them after the theater.
Yeah, I've seen each of them at least once after, but I probably hadn't seen any of them in, I don't know, 15 years or something.
Can I mention one thing I got? So Phantom Menace, when it first went on, get ready, VHS.
Yep.
I bought the special edition that came with a frame from an actual 35 millimeter print.
Yes.
And my frame was Shmi, a close-up of Shmi standing next to a wall. Think of all the frames you could have gotten from Phantom Menace.
Honestly, that's probably a better one than some other ones you could have gotten.
Yeah.
You could have got Watto being like.
I mean, you could have gotten. You could have gotten the trade negotiators.
But those are visual. I just had a middle-aged actress standing next to a wall. Like it's like, oh yeah, obviously Star Wars, because the middle-aged actress in a wall. What else would it be?
If somebody had told you that was still of Sally Field in Forrest Gump, you would have been like, yeah, you're probably right.
It could have been any number of old ladies and any number of walls.
God.
I didn't recognize the wall. But yeah, I very much needed the recap, and I think that I was glad that they spent the time that
Ryan's
they did.
totally right. It was so well made. I know, and I'd seen right. I have 2 sons who are older than Christian's kids, so they watched the prequels a lot when they were really young, and so I've seen them a ton. And yet, even with that, I still like that recap was. It got me. It is like you were saying. You were working out to it. My version of that workout was sitting on the couch with nachos.
Yeah.
A different kind of workout, but it got me. It got me
spiritual
equally
workout.
amped. Oh yeah. But it got me so ready for that show.
You're like, were those movies good? Watching that, you're like, I think they were. And just like the little Easter eggs of like, all right, like we're gonna show all these moments of them being like buddy, them turning. Of you're the chosen one, and then like Yoda going like, I'm going to teach you how to talk to your old master, and you're like, oh my god, are they going to touch on that? And just all this stuff. I was kind of hoping they were going to throw in some of the animated content because I'm a big fan of the animated shows. Which, again, that opening really set the tone of like, you know what, this show is going to be for the people who haven't really watched any of that.
Yeah,
I mean, just by having Inquisitors. I mean, that
you're so right.
The fact that the series, the live action series, I mean, we saw it, Book of Boba Fett, and to some extent Mandalorian, the fact that they incorporate the animated characters, I think that other franchises don't embrace some of the other projects and incorporate them as much. I mean, it was always something that I felt like, why should I spend my money? Specifically, this was for Star Trek, that they felt their approach was that the movies and TV series were the fact and the books and comic books were the fiction. So they can do whatever they want. It didn't really matter. And I know that they did the hard reset on the post Jedi stuff with when Force Awakens came out, and people were upset about that. But I did like that it always, it always mattered. I mean, for God's sake, Boba Fett was introduced on the Christmas special. The fact that Life Day actually exists in Star Wars canon is mind-boggling, because honestly it shouldn't. But I'm so glad it does.
When will be Arthur B. canon? That's a letter writing campaign I want to begin.
I mean, now you could make the case that the entire Golden Girls series is actually canon somehow. I don't quite know, but anyway. But Brian, to your point, just the incorporation of all these things, and as and I mentioned this before we started, but my kids are younger, and I did just within the last few weeks watch with my son A New Hope. We actually didn't watch it on VHS, but
please tell me you did, though.
No, I didn't. I watched a Blu-ray, because at his the summer day camp that he's at, they were doing Star Wars week, and then they said, like, we're gonna watch a Star Wars movie at the end of the week, and I'm like, all right, well, he's got to watch it with me first.
Yeah.
and my wife had just arranged for, like, because I tried to watch it with him last summer, and he thought it was a big kid movie, and he thought he would be scared. So I didn't want to force the issue. However, and I believe I've told Eric this, that last summer I did take him to see the Jungle Cruise movie. I took him to a press screening because he is so excited about geography, and he just wanted to see the Amazon River. Yeah. And I'm like, that movie is way scarier than Star Wars. It is also much less good than any Star Wars property ever, including the Christmas special.
Shots fired at Jungle Cruise, ladies.
I'm just saying, Jungle Cruise. Jungle Cruise is about as good as the ride. In any case, it's about as well written. It's better cast than the ride.
You're about to say the acting, I hope, is on par.
It's better cast than the ride.
Oh no, a gator. Those. I feel bad for those guys on that ride, man. That's a dark place you got to go to every day.
We've gotten to A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. But so having just watched Star Wars, it created no matter how many times I've seen it, having just seen it before I watched this, I think went a long way, and look, that recap of the prequels made me want to dip into the prequels again.
It's a good bridge. I do think this is I think a lot of content they've had come out over the past couple of years has done a great job of bridging prequel fans to the original trilogy fans. But I think this was the last, nail in that coffin, it was the bridge. Like, this was the missing piece. This was the connecting tissue that we always wanted. Like, you're going to take arguably the best actor from that trilogy and then reclaim Hayden, as well as like bringing in and kind of answering a lot of questions that just through time and a bunch of other stuff, there's some stuff in A New Hope where you're like, why does he call him Darth? Like, why does he lie to him about this? Why does he say, like, Darth Vader killed his dad? And they filling in these blanks. It's great.
And really, Leia doesn't remember meeting Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, I was like, are they gonna, like, Men in Black her memory? Like, is he gonna do some mind meld that we've not seen Jedis do before? And at one point in the series, I'm like, oh, she's just gonna think this is a dude with a beard named Ben, isn't she?
Right.
And I was like, well, no, they talk about it being Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then I'm like, all right, maybe she can lead. Maybe she can send a coded message better. Like, General Kenobi, you fought for my father, and obviously we've never met. So that was the way I chalked that up.
It's funny. Well, I just saw New Hope not that long ago over at the Academy, and they showed the
70 millimeter, right?
They showed 70 millimeter original.
Yeah, thanks for the invite to that, by the way.
Okay,
You
Christian,
you
are
invite me to the latest trauma film, but not.
Yes,
the
I
70
did, and
millimeter.
you said no to that, and thus
did.
that was you failed the test that would have gotten you to Star Wars.
Fair
And
enough.
also, I do have to weigh. I have 2 sons, and then my questionable relationship with Christian. Whose love do I
Okay,
need
but
most?
did your 2 sons take you to see Love and Thunder last night?
No, which is why now you are ahead of both of them.
Okay, great.
So don't worry. Don't.
So when The Empire Strikes
many
Back
steps.
70 millimeter is showing, you'll take me. And I assume you
I'm
both
jealous.
know the 70 millimeter of Empire Strikes Back is actually a different cut than the 35 millimeter. They tweaked some things by that point, but it was too expensive to they were like, well, we've already spent the money on the 70 millimeter, so you're stuck with it. But anyway,
my son came in looking for sympathy for something and got none. You noticed that, by the way.
Yeah, he'll get to go
Right.
and see Love and Thunder with all the commoners.
Oh, right.
That's what they call us. Oh my
That's
God.
what, yeah.
The lower
But anyway,
level.
so you're talking about how you saw. I know I had to bring my emotions into this, which is why I was.
Hey,
never
that's
a
what it's all
Jedi.
about.
This is
Yeah.
the life that we have signed up for, Christian.
Yeah,
It's not always going to be pretty, boss.
Yeah.
So the moment when Obi-Wan dies,
Mhm.
Luke is completely depressed and Leia's consoling him. That's the moment that might be the biggest hole of all from all of New Hope in terms of, wait, she knew him. So maybe, I don't know, she'd be a little upset too, even if she hadn't seen him in a bunch of years. Like, I love Obi-Wan. He saved my life. I'm so sorry, Luke. He was a special man. Nothing.
Yeah.
She's like,
Right.
yeah, you deal with this crap alone. I'm going to go focus on the ship.
No, there's definitely like an element while watching this show. The big preface of like what I walked into the show with, because I think that's very important with Star Wars, is like I have all these expectations. But a big thing with this show is it's exciting but horrifying, because like, wow, they are playing with the main toys in this franchise. Like these are the main players. That we're not messing around here. We're not doing like a Mandalorian thing where this is 5 years after the fact. We might bump into some people from the original content. This is like you are doing things with like Leia, Luke, Obi-Wan, Darth Vader. It's happening.
OG.
And like that's a slippery slope because you can really mess up. But that's also why it's so exciting. And I think as long as they put the toys back at the end of the show, that was what I was thinking the whole time watching it. I'm like, I'll be good. And I think there were a few things where I was like, all right, they still put the toys back. They did some stuff with them where I'm like, all right, is that going to make sense when I go back and watch this? I still think it will. I still think there's another 10 years where obviously like Luke's relationship's a lot more fresh with Obi-Wan. He just found out, oh, this is the one guy who like actually told me something real about my father and how he's been taken from me. Whereas Leia, I guess, she did send a message out to him and he died, but he was more of like a protector. Like he did say things about her parents, but and that was a great moment that we should talk about at the end of the show, where it was almost simultaneously like he's getting this off his chest to her, but she took it in a way of her adopted parents. Like she was like, oh, I know, and looked at them, and that was also a great moment. But
no, I think that's great too, because that's clearly Obi-Wan has made peace with who Anakin was, and that Darth Vader is not who he was. And I did actually like the thing that Ryan referenced, the touch where it's like he refers to him as Darth because he's only a master of evil, Darth in New Hope, So it's like, of course he calls him Darth. This is a different guy, and I mean, I agree with you that this does create some holes, but not enough where I'm going to let it bother me.
Nothing.
And Saxon once again makes the point. She brought Luke a blanket at least. So he had a security blanket,
Wait,
so.
Can I respond to something Ryan said? Because there's Ryan. Because I have with me my original Darth Vader toy collection.
I have that somewhere in this room, but I can't get my hands on it right now. But
I
have it. It's filled with figures, right?
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I have it. You can hear him rattling.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's full. And I'm worried though because the dog is here.
In this room, I have all of my Star Wars figures for my kids. That's why I always save them.
Right.
I did give some of my classic ones to my kids, who would then proceed to play with them, which was beautiful to see. Wonderful moments. Yeah. And then they would drop them, and our old dog, would eat them. And then I didn't like my kids as much, and I didn't like that feeling.
I remember a dog ate one of my Star Wars toys. I had a Mace Windu, and I was like, "This must be what he looks like after he gets electrocuted."
And you would work him into the story every time.
I had
shoot up.
I had left a Luke Skywalker in the X-wing pilot uniform in the yard, and unfortunately the lawnmower got to him. But I kept the pieces
Oh, no.
and did incorporate that into play sometimes. So bad things sometimes happen to Luke, but he could always come through.
Luke's
just
colon
like
was
C-3PO.
often a toy you would play with.
I think that I know a few people,
Yeah.
two of whom have been on various podcasts with me. One you know quite well, Ryan.
Oh, boy.
Z Anderson
Yes.
quit the show. She just couldn't deal with it. My friend Will Sterling of the Bladtcast fame, he bailed after episode 3. And
for Obi-Wan.
Of Obi-Wan.
Wow.
Both of them.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Black.
I thought you were talking about
No,
the
no, no.
Bladtcast. I was like,
They're on the
sorry to
Bladtcast.
hear that.
I don't remember this.
They
this
both
story.
bailed on watching the show.
Yeah.
And
They bail on
they publicly mentioned it. I mean, Z actually texted it to me earlier. I was talking to her about something else, but Will had posted in response to our pal Dominica Saxon that he gave up after episode 3. And this is somebody who walked out of Multiverse of Madness. So
I mean, look, we all have like idiot friends. Like, I know we all have like people. We all make big mistakes. I just think like their loss.
Well, you know what? Good. Let it be a pox on them that they don't get to see 5 and 6 then.
Well,
yeah. I mean,
and
look,
it's
this
almost
is a
like
good one.
I don't want to tell them. I don't want to tell anybody like, oh, just watch the lightsaber fight at the end of episode 6. I'm like, no, if you're not going to watch, and it's not like it's that long. My complaint about Disney Plus shows is always the fact of those episodes that are like 36 minutes. And this had some of those, and it's fine because I was binging it. So it didn't annoy me the way it usually did. Ryan and I did the Mandalorian season 1 after show for AfterBuzz. And, those weeks where it was under 40 minutes. I was irate,
Well, yeah,
come in with a scotch.
That is talking runtime. That's a thing with this show. I will critique a little. Like another thing coming into this series is that we're coming off of we haven't had a movie since 2019, and before Rise of Skywalker, we had Solo, and Solo for many reasons did not perform well at the box office. And I think I've always kind of disagreed with how it's apparent how Disney feels like that movie failed. I think it's abundant of reasons, but probably because they had to reshoot a lot of it, and there's just no way they were going to make the budget back. But for some reason, the takeaway was we'll never do a Solo movie again. And every indication was this series was going to be a movie at one point, and now they made it a show. I was actually excited by the pivot because it meant like, oh, more content. But really, I was kind of hoping for longer episodes. I was hoping that finale was, I wish that they were the length of that finale throughout. We're in a world where Stranger Things is an hour and a half. And that's because that show is a given. It's a guarantee. People are going to watch it. It's huge. To me, this show is the biggest guarantee they've put out yet. Like, I really don't think there is a scenario where this show does not get the views. And I remember after episode 3, everyone was like, this is the biggest Disney Plus show. And it's like, yeah, of course it is. And for some reason, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. I didn't think that the budget visually reflected that. And I'm kind of shocked maybe they didn't think it would be the biggest show, because I thought that was going to be obvious. And like, why weren't they longer? Like, I really do think there were some moments here throughout the show that like could have been elongated just a little bit more, just to sit with, like, meet some characters. I didn't really feel like we got to know Ice Cube's son, who is a character in this show. Like, he's kind of in and out. And same with like Kumail. He's in that second episode a lot, but he comes back and I'm like, he's in and out. Like, we're not really.
Yeah.
That's what I want from a TV show. Do you think that the budget really was high enough for this? Like, did they give it enough time?
I feel like they did, and I agree with you to an extent, but because they're both properties that have turned into essentially streaming series, I can only compare it to the people who didn't like this show clearly didn't watch Star Trek Picard. because I've been very outspoken that is one of the worst television experiences of my life, of something that I've
Wow, I didn't
watched
know
through
this.
to completion. Because there's shows that I'll quit, but I didn't.
Sure.
And that was a show where you saw
love your
them.
fans. This is
You're a
why.
big fan. Right, you're a big
Right.
fan of the new Next Generation. Yeah.
Huge fan of the Next Generation.
But
But I'm saying, you kept going because of your fans. It was like Rocky fighting for.
Yeah, I continued
America.
because I was doing a weekly show about it.
Yeah.
And I thought it was actually way more entertaining.
Everyone was
on
your
so
shoulders, depending on you, and you
Yeah.
carried on.
Oh yeah, no.
But do you think that like Picard was as obvious a success when they announced that show as this show was? Because when they said this show, I was like,
Star
this
Trek,
is box
that's why I
office.
want to make the comparison. For Star Trek, yes, the first season was consistent with Discovery, the other streaming show up to that point, and you felt like they spared no expense on effects and anything that they needed to do.
Okay.
On Picard, they spared almost every expense. It was set in like modern Los Angeles.
Oh, right.
They would have chase scenes that took place, car chases that was like clearly the same 2 blocks. Now, granted, I live here, so I recognized it, but I'm like,
Right.
they closed off 2 streets and they kept driving around on them, and it didn't, so there was a lot of that. And so this, I didn't get those feelings. For some reason, yeah, I would think that Mandalorian looks like, it has like a better feel to it than this, but I don't know. I didn't feel like,
I didn't feel it the whole time.
Corners on this,
but some moments,
yeah,
like 1 or 2 moments.
What did you think, Eric?
Well, no, I Ron, you're bringing up a really good point here. It's like, I think and again, I'm gonna, like Christian, I'm gonna tie MCU here with Star Wars. I think there are some definite set pieces in both the TV versions of MCU and Star Wars that are just lacking. I mean, you're bringing up some things with like actors who were sort of underutilized, and that could be the writing, that could be any number of things. The editing, I mean, like more scenes that they shot that they just didn't use. I mean, the actress from Pen 15, who's a really phenomenal talent, Maya, I blanking on her last name. Do you know her name, Christian? Know who I'm talking?
Wait, on
Simone,
which show?
So she's on Pen 15, and she was on Kenobi.
Which character?
She was, I think, one of the pilots.
I'm forgetting. Yeah. Oh, she was like one of the snowspeeder.
So Maya Erskine is her name,
right?
And yes, she was one of the pilots. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I felt like you did as much with that character as possible. But I know what you're saying. Sometimes
why get her for that role? Because she's actually above that. But yeah, I think the set pieces. This is like Miss Marvel's been in kind of an interesting watch there, where some of the chase moments or fight moments are like woefully undercooked, and then other ones like this recent episode that has this big sort of chase in a bazaar was great. So I think sometimes it's budget, and sometimes it might, and I'm not, and with no shade thrown on Deborah Chow, but like there's sometimes where I feel like the directors aren't taking advantage of the they're being hamstrung by the limited budget.
That's what I was going to say. Sometimes the directors, are forced to, they're given lemons and asked to, make a Chianti out of it, and there's only so much that you can do with that. But I know, I agree that in some ways, but I would say that all of these Star Wars shows, and yes, to extend it to MCU and Star Trek, I am impressed, generally speaking, the amount of money that they spend on these things and how, the cinema-like quality. Yeah, there are probably some moments in this, but in general, like they did, if they had to cut corners in order to give us that fight scene in episode 6, I'm going to have to understand the realities of making a television series. But was there one for you, Ryan? Was there something where you were like, man, this one, was there like a
yeah.
Okay, what was it?
I don't even want to, this isn't even necessarily like a critique, but this was something, again, walking into the show, I'm like, everything in this new generation of Star Wars has looked really good. Like, I don't think we've ever had something that's looked like bad. And I don't think anything in this show looked bad. I think what I realized though is this show embraced being a television series, which I was always like dreaming and imagining it. being like the movies. And that was a hard thing for my brain to mentally grasp. Like they really were like, this is going to be like a serial limited series. We're going to end on like a cliffhanger each week. And I think, Mandalorian does that in a Western sense. But the budget I felt like was always there. And I think when you have talent like Ewan McGregor and all these huge stars in your show, like that's probably where a lot of the money goes. And I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as to say like a lot of this looked cheap. I think a lot of it looked good. It's just in every gallery, every Disney Plus Mandalorian Star Wars gallery, it's like we have these screens and these screens can like put anything on them. And this was the first show I kind of could tell like that's a screen. And like I bet it works wonders for an actor, right? It's way better than having just a green screen. But there were a few moments where I was like, you know what? They're not in the desert for this shoot, like, or they're not here. And that's always been something that's kind of cool about Star Wars is you're like, man, they went to like Africa and like shot this there. Or they went to, like the salt flats and like made Crate. And I think that's something I always love that, it's TV. So I had to accept that. I had to accept that every planet was going to be some kind of derivative of like a sand or dirt planet. Which is cool and like it works. But I think that was like a hurdle I had to cross. And you're right. Like if it means, you kind of summed it up. If it means we get that 6th episode, I'm good. But along the way, it was a bit of a bumpy ride for me where I was like, oh gosh, is this going to be like, how am I going to look back on this?
Fortunately, there was nothing here in the order of the Free Jack-esque chase scene from Boba Fett with the teenagers.
Right.
Oh my God, that was Robert Rodriguez
that's
directing
a good comparison
that one
for sure. Yeah.
I think Deborah Chow. The thing you have to nail is the characters, right? And we haven't even talked about Reva yet, but Reva is this element of the show where this show has another issue going in where you're like, I know what happens to the main character. He's going to be fine. Like Luke's going to be fine. Yeah. Every time Leia's in trouble, guess what? She's going to be fine because she's in the next like 6 movies. So that's how do you get us to care? And I think Reva was a point of contention for a lot of people that ultimately I really liked where they went because I was kind of worried they're going to go this cliche route of, she's just going to turn good. But then they go down this really dark route of like, I laid in the dead bodies of all my friends and like saw him cut them down and I just want revenge. You're like, what? Like, what did you guys? How did you feel about Reva?
We've all been there. We've all had dark nights like that. I mean, Ryan, Delaware's a dangerous state, man. I mean,
Wilmington, yikes!
It's a miracle we made it out alive. Yeah, Reva's an interesting character. I as far as the blowback. Hello, thank you.
Dark Knight, say.
Dark Knight, thank you.
Dark Knight.
Away with you, boy. Away. I think it's funny. Her character, I liked. I wish there was a little more complexity to her, but then we got there. As it carried on, when we understood a bit more about her, I liked her more to the point. Like, I understand with writing characters, you don't want to give us everything up front. But I think it actually hurt her character to hold some of that stuff back. They did.
So right, I completely agree with that. I feel like I thought there was a reason they kind of had the cards down, and they opened the show with the Order 66 scene. Yeah. Where I was like, let's go! Like we got, and I'm like, oh, she's probably one of those kids, and I felt like each week we were kind of guessing, like, oh, maybe she was one of those kids. Where there really is no reason they shouldn't have told us that up front. And I think that would have been a cool additional layer to the show of like, well, she was like one of those kids in Order 66. Like, how did she get here? And us actually knowing that as opposed to wondering, because it was just a lot to throw on us in that 5th and 6th episode. I think it worked, but it just felt like information overload where unfortunately, I'm tuning into the show for Vader and Kenobi, and this is great that they're showing us this stuff with her. But I'm like, man, if they gave us this a little earlier, I probably would have been even more invested than I ultimately
I can
was.
understand the desire to have it kind of be a reveal because it definitely throws you off the scent to think that, yeah, she just wants to be Grand Inquisitor. She just wants to impress Vader. And, so it is at least a nice surprise, I guess, in some way. But I agree. You can give it to us earlier, for sure. It did make her character much more interesting, though, because it was very reminiscent of other characters, mostly in extended universe stuff. But, it's like, oh, I just want to impress Vader. I thought she was great. And I did not realize till after the fact that she was the actress from Queen's Gambit. I put that together later. But she was great in that too. And I did really like her. I liked that there was, Eric, you referenced it, that there was humanity to her, but she's not a good guy, in the tradition, she still obviously has a lot of issues. Not entirely sure how she survived the lightsaber to the gut by
we should talk about that.
Most experienced killing machine in the galaxy.
Right. Lightsaber. What's fight like? What is it? Set your guns to stun. Set your lightsaber to mildly hurt.
Right.
It's like, wait, what? Like,
there is people
have died because of less.
At least when Ming-Na Wen, when Fennec Shan survived, there was a whole explanation of like they rebuilt her. I'm like, great. God, yeah. So she got the Steve Austin $6 Million Man treatment. We can rebuild her. This was like, how'd she even get off the planet? And I try to not let stuff like that bother me, but I'm like, man, I needed something. Sometimes I need a crumb. I'm like, understand that this is a logic flaw and give us something. It doesn't even have to be a good explanation, but show us that you were aware. And I'm sorry, what were you saying?
There was the explanation. It's like, hate makes you surprisingly strong. I mean, it's like, really good, because I'm filled with it. I'm very excited for my own life. That means I can take a saber to the belly. I'll be okay. Great. It's about time I get hate for something, except sports allegiances.
I think that the thing is, like, people have died from far less, but also people have come back from far worse in this world. Because this is a
Darth Maul,
and maybe this is just like a thing in Star Wars in general, where Darth Maul got his whole waist chopped off, but because he had so much hate, he was able to stay alive until he got like robot legs. And like it works, and he's amazing in the animated stuff, and we love it. And I think that similar thing with her, that they had a line, I think that was the crumb. They're like, oh, she had like so much, or the Grand Inquisitor had so much hate when he got stabbed in the chest that he was able to stay alive. And you're like, okay, I think I don't have an issue with that. You just can't do it twice in the same show. You can't have him get stabbed in the chest and then her, and then have a flashback where like maybe she got stabbed in the chest, and you're like, there's 3 stabbing discussions going on now, and it's like, give us, something, or just do something with the Grand Inquisitor differently. That is another thing I wanted to kind of bring up. Like, as a fan of Rebels, he's in season 1 of Rebels, so when that happens, everyone's like, huh? Like, but he's like alive later. And I guess, people didn't see Rebels. They're thinking something else, but just like a weird kind of red herring to have, I think, in the show. I was curious how they were going to do it, but it ultimately kind of hurts the Reva character when she gets stabbed in the chest. Cause then you're like, that just happened to him. And maybe when they were writing it, they were like, well, if he can come back from it now, like we know she can. It's just, there's something up with they really got to articulate like, oh, the hate like kept him alive, because Qui-Gon Jinn got like stabbed in the chest. He's a ghost at the end of the show.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. Dominica Saxon says, after Grand Inquisitor surviving a lightsaber impalement, I'm surprised he didn't kill Third Sister just to make sure. And again, this doesn't unravel the show. It is just one of those things. But yeah, you're right. He had to. I didn't think about it in that context. The Grand Inquisitor had to survive.
And they brought him back, and they kind of like, I think, Ryan, to your point, they brought him back just to give us that bridge to Rebels, but they didn't really do anything with him coming back except saying, aha,
right,
hate, it's what's for dinner.
Well, I am your father moment is Vader being like, well, I was on you like the whole time. I knew. And I want, the one thing I will give massive props to this show is, like, we should talk like Order 66. There's a ton of things weird with the prequels. That was like a thing I remember as a kid being like, whoa. And then as growing up, being like, wow, he goes for it with that. Like George Lucas takes the gloves off.
The fact that
he's like, this is Hitler.
And we actually deal with the fact this many years later that Anakin goes to the temple and kills all the young
kids.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, he becomes Darth Vader for a reason. Let's not try and gloss over that.
And they double down on
I'm
it.
glad that they didn't, and I was like, yeah, that's an important moment to deal with. And, it's horrifying. And I think it is important to have that. And yeah, I think anytime they deal with Order 66, it's very much like, yeah, we have to, there's, this, to have her survive by playing dead is kind of the only way that I feel like, if she had been spared for some reason, I wouldn't have bought it.
I would
know what I
that.
mean? Like,
yeah,
and then you rewrite like, oh, he didn't kill, because they also have a line of like, these Inquisitors are other Jedi, and I'm like, oh, are they gonna rewrite? Like, did he not kill any of the kids? He just turned them into Inquisitors. And they're like, no, we're gonna double down, and he totally killed all of the kids except her, and she like slept with dead people, and like is charting this revenge path for 10 years. And you're like, okay.
But let's be honest, the Star Wars galaxy, man, you get huge forgiveness in this galaxy, because like right at the end, Darth Vader, I'm sorry, son, you saved me, you did, and then he's like, he's all sad. It's like, okay, yeah, no, I get it. It was his dad. It was whatever, bad stuff, bad seafood turned him into this monster. But he killed a lot of people,
right?
A lot of people. Same with
no,
I mean, like same thing. She killed a lot of people.
There are scenes in the original trilogy where Vader uses his choke thing on a DoorDash delivery person because his fries were soggy. I feel like he was just killing people because he could.
Oh yeah.
The number of promotions and demotions. I mean, you would think it was George Steinbrenner and Billy Martin. Just the way that it's like, you're fired, you're hired. It's like, you're the admiral now. I'm the admiral now.
Lord.
Yeah, and it's just like, all right, we get it. So yeah, to have a bad Vader is important. Yeah. And I'm so glad that we got the bad Vader, but you can't have that be effective if you didn't have James Earl Jones. I don't care who they could have hired that sounded like him. The fact that we had James Earl Jones, bless us that we still have him on this mortal coil.
And that his voice is strong. I know, Christian, that's something you brought up with Picard.
With Patrick Stewart,
like his age. I mean, he's wonderful.
He doesn't sound like he used to. Yeah.
He sounds, and then when he showed up in Multiverse, same thing. It's like, Xavier.
Whoa,
Xavier.
He's an older Xavier. It's all right.
I mean,
he played him perfectly in Logan because he's like, that was years old. But to have him, I think that's important. And I mean, you kind of wonder like, oh, are we gonna get Qui-Gon at some point? Will he not talk to him? Is it because he's a Jedi with a certain set of skills, and one of those skills is not being a Force ghost? I didn't know. So yeah, we can still talk about some of the other elements to this, but sort of the way that it ends, it leaves us in a situation where like, okay, so this can be the status quo and lead us into A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
Do we personally expect another season of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Do we want it? What do you think, Ryan?
I really do. I do love this show. I don't really want a season 2 for as it lies right now. I mean, they could drop a trailer and I change my mind immediately, but I kind of like this as a nice miniseries. I'm not opposed to Obi-Wan popping up in other shows. Like if he makes a cameo in Andor or whatever. Yeah. I'm game. I'm in. Same with Reva. Same with a lot of these characters. I'm fine with them popping up. I think a whole other season 2 with 6 episodes, and it might just be a little forced, or it just might be a little. I don't know what the big villain would be for that. It would really be a hard sell for me. But you do have 10 years. A thing I was kind of thinking with the show. I thought the show was going to take place over a lot longer period of time. I thought we were going to have more time jumps. it's really only like a week and a half when you look at it. Like it's probably 7 days.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. I think of it that way. You're right. It is actually over a pretty short period.
It's a short
of time.
and you end with Qui-Gon, and I think like I'm assuming he's bringing him into that area and he's going to teach him how to become a Force ghost or look into the beyond. So maybe if there was a season 2, I'd want him to jump into a lot more Force stuff. I'd want a lot more interaction, maybe like even visit Yoda, something.
I did wonder if he was going to talk to Yoda at any point during the season. I think it would have been forced if he had. No pun intended when I said forced. But I wouldn't have hated it if he did. I would have been like, oh, there's Yoda. Yeah, it would have needed to be puppet Yoda, not CGI Yoda. What do you think, Eric, about there being more? Do you want it? Do you think we'll get it? Where do you come down?
Ryan, you're bringing up before the idea of like the kind of bold strokes of playing with the big OGs, the big players like Obi-Wan. But what winds up happening, though, is it limits them because there's so much story already, chalked up. So you then have this very kind of narrow path you could take. It limits you, because in essence, Grand Inquisitor shows up, but we know he doesn't die. Leia shows up, we know she doesn't die. So what they're kind of doing if they keep doubling down on these like known characters and known sort of moments, I feel like their storytelling is going to get really it's already boxed in, as opposed to I look at the calendar of Star Wars TV titles, and admittedly I didn't watch all of Clone Wars. I watched some and I always liked it, but I never was a kind of like an avid watcher of it. And so I know for those like yourself who are like fans of Clone Wars and Rebels, like those shows are going to be pretty exciting. And I saw the ad for what's the next Star Wars
Andor,
and that looked good. But
yeah,
the truth is like they kind of need to go there because with these original characters, it's like there's almost no room left for them to play with them. You're really boxed in by what they already have in their timelines. So I think,
how interesting could it be?
Right. There's just, and Kenobi told a pretty complete story in the end of it all. It's kind of like how Obi-Wan got his groove back, which I think would have been a better title, to be honest.
Would it be better to be how Obi-Wan got his Force back?
How his Force back, right?
Force back mountain. I don't know. I'm just trying.
I saw that movie. Different than I expected.
It was a little different.
But yeah, I'm okay with this. Was it? I'd be perfectly happy to see Ewan McGregor and other stuff. He was terrific, but it will feel like at some point the dog gets the tail, and what do you do with the tail?
Right.
Yeah, and honestly, look, if the second season is a lot of time on the farm with Owen Beru, and Ben goes back to working in the meatpacking plant, and that's actually what every episode is, I'm like, all right, I'll appreciate the exercise.
It becomes a workplace comedy about the meat plant.
Yeah. Underutilized, I think, in the prequels out of necessity. But I thought that Joel Edgerton as Uncle Owen, you can see him as the Uncle Owen in A New Hope.
He brought it.
Yeah. And I think he's I guess 10 years younger in the prequels, and he doesn't really have almost anything to do, but you're just like, oh yeah, he grows up into that guy, whose only job is to keep Luke from going to the academy.
In 10 years, and by the way, and like
it's only 10 years.
I know, like those 10 years must be rough.
I know.
I mean, they do live on a planet with 2 suns, so it does age pretty quickly.
And Beru too. I mean, listen, I don't want to throw any hate on either actors who played Beru, but I think Beru might have aged even more because she's still youthful looking in this series. And I love, by the way,
look,
Ember was great. Like,
true.
she's like, dude, stop effing around. We're gonna get this.
Yeah, look, in this series, I still would. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
In A New Hope,
but maybe it depends how much blue milk I have.
But
oh my god, I thought he looked close to Phil Brown.
The thinking is like, in 10 years, we're gonna go from even this aged older Ewan McGregor to Sir Alec Guinness. Like, I wouldn't believe that he grew into the Alec Guinness from Bridge on the River Kwai.
Like,
So-
and maybe, and look,
Well, I
they're
think he's
filling
younger
in
than
some
him.
blanks. Like they're doing this thing where they're answering questions we've always wondered, but they weren't like the biggest deal. Like maybe they do something really creative with Obi-Wan and maybe explain the age thing. I don't know, or maybe it's something as simple as there's two sons. I really, it's unclear, but I do think there is a chance that that we get a season 2 just because this was popular. I think like Lucasfilm Disney's so reactionary with a lot of this stuff. Like the show became a TV show because of how another thing performed. I wouldn't be surprised that this is the biggest Disney Plus show that they're like, all right, well, we have to figure out a season 2. I just hope the story's there. I mean, you look at all the writers for this, they got like Andrew Stanton from Pixar and like a ton of people came in and I was kind of worried each week, like, okay, I hope they don't fumble the bag. And I don't think they did. But my main thing is I just wanted to see like Hayden come back, Ewan kick ass, and let's get a cool Qui-Gon moment. I personally, can I bring something about the Qui-Gon moment?
Go ahead.
So, okay, I'm not going to like rewrite this, but I really think it would have been cool if Qui-Gon appeared to Obi-Wan when he was holding the rocks at first. Like
right.
Vader,
I kind of thought it would go there too.
Yeah. When Vader has the high ground.
Yeah.
And he's like pummeling him and he thinks he just caved him in and he's somehow holding all the rocks with the Force. I think it would have been a cool like Spider-Man homecoming moment where he's like, come in and maybe maybe just hear him and then you see him later. Something like I think that would have been a powerful moment.
When you first said it, I wasn't sold, but if you heard him, that actually would have gone a long way. Yeah, I think that would have helped. But honestly, I think Liam Neeson's rate per minute is probably just too high. That's my takeaway. Was it was a practical reason like that. I'm like, it was just like, it's like
they hired him on Cameo. And that's what we get.
Yeah, it's like why is he looking at a cell phone to talk to Qui-Gon? Look, I think the door that they've left open is that this was a Leia story. If they feel like they can give us a Luke story that ties Ben in, I think that that's sort of the avenue we have. But I think he's still largely going to be the recluse that we see in A New Hope. Yes, he helped this cause, but lose my number. You know what I mean? Like he still doesn't want to be that active. So his lightsaber is not going to be buried in the desert anymore. But he's not going to be walking around with it probably either. So if we do get more, I agree 100%. It needs to be good. It needs to be worth it. And I do think that if we get it, it'll be worth it. But there's so much other stuff they have going on. And Ewan McGregor is one of those actors who I just usually appreciate him, whatever he's in, so I'll be fine, if they decide to do it. But
it's kind of like he always classes up the joint because he's not always picked great things to be in, but he's not going to phone it in. Like he definitely over the years too, his range, like, if you saw that season of Fargo he was in, he was incredible in that in dual roles too.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Great. He was great. Yeah.
Who can forget? I mean, Christopher Robin.
Oh, right.
Robots? Yeah, no. I love robots. I love robots. I'm a big fan.
I got a toaster from Robots. Part of I still have the toaster. But yeah, look, I don't know what it is. It's interesting that we live in an age where people are just so quick to be unhappy with things. I try to like everything, and Ryan knows this about me. But when I don't like it, I'm not going to pretend that I do.
Yeah.
And Mandalorian was the real convergence of I wanted something to be good, and it was so much better than I ever thought it could be. And it's funny because when it started, I'm like, yeah, he's a Mandalorian, but give us Boba Fett. Well, then they give us Boba Fett, and it's like, no, bring back the Mandalorian. He's the one I like better now. And but it's even that, it's like they're gonna if they do another season of Boba Fett, I'm like, okay, fine, I guess it's fine. Even though I didn't really like it.
I just want Hammerhead's origin story. Like that's one of those like smaller characters that.
Can we go? Can we have like a? This would be like a special. Can we have like a tour documentary for the Modal Nodes? I believe is the name of the band in the cantina. I would like a Spinal Tap-esque movie starring them. Look, they have a streaming service. Tell me why you can't do this now.
Oh wait, this guy. If anyone deserves...
Is that the Rancor Keeper?
I think it was, but I lost his headdress.
You lost his headdress, yeah. Because now he just looks like Marlon Brando in the Island of Dr. Moreau. So you need a miniature version.
Actually, in Apocalypse Now, I'd even say.
The horror. Yeah, look, and in general, I always want to love Star Wars. And so then when I don't, it hurts so much more than other things. When it lets me down, it lets me down hard. But
yeah.
There's so much that they have planned. It is interesting that we don't seem to be on a path to getting a movie anytime soon. And, I would like there to be, do a standalone movie that is not tied into any of the lore that has come before.
Well, that's Taika Waititi's movie. That's what it's going to be. It's going to
tell a great story.
Yeah.
And don't,
it'll be a little goofy.
You don't sign somebody to a trilogy. Just make a movie and see what happens from there.
Well, remember for a while, and this is the thing, and I mean, Kathleen Marshall as a producer, Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah. You look at her credits and they're remarkable.
Sure.
Some say the best in all of Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, she's done okay. She knows, she clearly knows what she's doing. Here's the thing that I think, ironically, I think we talked about this even last week, Christian, in your other show. It's like, Kevin Feige has figured out a way to make all this stuff work because there's a really good, strong, uniform vision that keeps shifting with the storytelling. He hires a variety of artists to sort of push the storytelling this way and that way, but he is always keeping the through line. What happened with Star Wars with the films is, in essence, like you didn't necessarily have someone at the steering wheel. So the story kind of would drift here and then they would be like, no, we got to push it back this way. And they gave out a trilogy to Rian Johnson. They gave out a trilogy to the guys who did Game of Thrones. So it was like almost to the point where
it was definitely like an Oprah season premiere. You get a trilogy.
You get a trilogy.
You get a trilogy. And no, I agree. And I think that there was a point where their goal was to give us a Star Wars movie every year. And at that time, I'm like, that is not a good goal. That is too much.
And look how many people got fired too. I mean, and I know we had that with the MCU.
Lord and Miller are incredibly talented filmmakers. And look, their version of Solo was clearly not what the studio wanted, but and then just like I'm sure Edgar Wright's Ant-Man would have been great as well, by the way.
Right.
But it's all right. So, but don't abandon giving us movies, and I'm sure they won't. Just focus on making them good. That's the point for all of it, and I think that there may have been some shortcomings with this show with Obi-Wan Kenobi, but having Deborah Chow, having the people involved that were, and ultimately, yes, it did come down to Ewan McGregor. And look, the fact that we did have, I referenced already James Earl Jones, we didn't want a new Kermit situation, where all of a sudden Kermit starts talking and you go like, whoa.
Right.
And by the way, I have kids that are little. New Kermit is nothing. People complain about New Kermit.
Really?
When you hear New Big Bird, it's like not even the same character. You're just like, oh, you didn't even try.
Wow.
Hello, I'm Big Bud.
I even heard
this is my friend, Mr. Snuffleupagus. He
don't
keeps his trunk in his ass. If I go into walk-in, it's clearly almost time to end. But what were you going to say, Ryan?
Well, I know with one thing I don't know this for a fact, but I'm pretty sure with James Earl Jones is they use that similar technology they used for Luke in Mandalorian season 2, his voice, which is cool. Like he's still getting a paycheck. I think they're digitally he's said so many words that they can like put it in a machine and it like churns it out.
Yeah.
In Rogue, you look back, you listen to Rogue One, he's like kind of sounding a little old in Rogue One. He sounds great, but this show, it felt like I was in 1977. Like it's crazy good. And when you have that ability, like it's pretty great. I agree. Like we all want good Star Wars. Like I go into everything they release. Like I hope this is the best. But I also think for me, it's all about moments. Star Wars is all moments. Like I don't look at this stuff like I do other content. It's all moments for me. And even like my least favorite Star Wars there's probably a few moments I like. I can always find something. And I think with this show, there were probably more amazing moments than their other live action stuff to this point. As a whole, I think like Mandalorian season 1 still kind of wears the crown for me, and then season 2, and then this, and then Boba. But I thought this was excellent, and you could tell like they care, and no one's phoning it in. They're going for it. They're trying to satisfy a lot of people. But like we got to see Alderaan, we got to like see Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru as characters now. Like
we got Flea, for Christ's sake.
We got Flea.
Right. Which I think he was playing his character from Back to the Future 2 and 3, by the way.
Yeah, I think
a very elaborate crossover there that no one's talking about.
Or Big Lebowski, yeah. Or I think he was. I also think he was thrown in there because I think Deborah Chow directed a music video for the new album, and she was like, "All right, you can come on in."
Flea just sat outside the set until they put him in it, and then he got murdered. That was the best part. They killed him.
They killed him. They did kill him.
And brutally at that. So that
was because he wanted to show up just wearing a sock, and they were like, "All right, no, we'll just write you out." I mean, come on, this is still Disney, for God's sake. We gotta draw the line somewhere.
Under every costume. I bet he had it on though.
Yeah, and our pal Dominicus Saxon now taking to Twitter. Saying this was a fun, cool episode. Christopher Walken making an appearance was worth staying up for. I always feel like such a hack if I pull out the Walken card just because it's I don't know. It's a bit of a low hanging. A lot of people have that.
I opened that door. No, it's on.
A lot of people have that arrow in their quiver, and mine isn't even particularly good. But it's. I have one friend who loves it. That's all that really matters. Look. So very excited to have been able to talk about this show. I was happy with it. I will encourage people. If they say, "Do you think it's worth watching?" I'll say yes. But a good question before you answer is, what did you think of the prequels? Because I don't love the prequels, but I never hated them. You have people who just hate the prequels. And I think that as we've gotten further removed from the sequel trilogy, I think it makes me appreciate the prequel trilogy more, because I think that it was a more unified, clear vision. And yes, I think in hindsight, if they knew JJ was going to do the episode 9, they would have had him do episode 8. Because then it would have at least been consistent, but that's not what we got. So, so anyway, I think that even if you don't, though, it's like, you got to like Ben Kenobi. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I don't know, Ryan, to sort of wear a different hat for a second.
Yeah.
Who do you think this show is not for? I referenced a couple people, one of whom that was just like, I can't watch this.
Interesting.
And it surprises me, but whatever. People don't have. If people don't like something, don't watch it. I think that is a huge takeaway from I was going to say America, but the world in 2022. If you don't like it, you do not have to watch it.
I think that's a great question. And I think my answer is kind of what I was saying at the very beginning of the show, which is I was more excited about this show than literally any other TV show ever made. I was so hyped going into this because it's Star Wars, it's Obi-Wan. I'm getting all the nostalgia from when I was a kid. This is like No Way Home times a million for me when I heard
okay, but if you read tomorrow that Lost season 7 was about to happen, would that
this is still
okay.
It.
Wow, that's hardcore.
I mean, it's
okay.
Come on, it's Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor coming up for Star Wars, being directed by Deborah Chow. Like this is for me. It's a lot of I think this is for the most people. Like.
Yeah,
there might be some people who are kind of like, well, do I need to watch anything? It's like that will enhance your viewing, but I also think you'll get a lot out of this. I think when it comes to I like all Star Wars and I like the prequels, but my biggest complaint is like you have to protect your actors, and I don't think George Lucas, as brilliant as he is, I don't think he protected his actors in those movies, and I think that's
but
like
I think that he also didn't in New Hope. I mean,
true.
Carrie Fisher had T-shirts made that said "faster, more intense" because that was how he directed. He would tell them, do their lines faster, more intense. So he said it so often she had shirts made. Yeah,
true. I will say, like, again, you do have the added benefit of like, we're all doing this for the first time, but everything's like very practical. It's around here. When you're just like in a green room, and you got to be able to recognize like, there's just no way on God's green earth that was like Hayden's best take of being like, I hate sand. Like, there's just no way. Like, you get another take. Like, you go back and you reshoot it. You do something, because what they did like to Hayden and Natalie Portman with a lot of that dialogue and that editing, it's just like you're hanging them out to dry, and it's brutal. And like, I really do think this show is unfinished business, fulfilled for them, or at least for Hayden. And it's nostalgic. It's crossing out. It's dotting its I's, crossing its T's. When he says hello there. In the finale, I lost my mind.
That's why I started this show that way.
I lost my mind. I forgot about it. I was like, he has to say it at one point, and it's like the best hello there.
It was, it was. And look, I think it's important because, you talked about how Disney Star Wars as an entity, it's a specific branch of Star Wars, is very reactionary and is very eager to please. It would be the safe route to just ignore the prequels and move on from them, because there is a very vocal contingent that doesn't like them, but to appreciate the value of them and to continue telling stories and to tie together those two trilogies. Sorry. I think it's great that they're willing to do it. And when they decide that they don't care and they're going to give us Jar Jar a Star Wars story, that's going to be because they're like, we don't care. We have a good story to tell about him. And you know what? My kid be like 7 or 8 by then. He'll probably love Jar Jar Star Wars.
I made this joke.
When I watch go finish your thought, Eric. And I have finish your thought, Ryan. And then I have a question for Eric.
I was gonna say, I made this joke on Twitter. I think Taika's movie's Jar Jar Rabbit. Like, that's his movie.
Oh, I love that.
That's great, right?
That's a nice one.
But I will say, like, I think it's very popular online for people to kind of like say like Disney Star Wars. I think it's all Lucasfilm. I really do think like they are the ones.
No, I just think that the approach is very different, because you had made the point. I don't think George ignored what the fan base said, and granted, different eras and all that. But I think that he still told the stories he was going to tell anyway. Yeah. I think that Rise of Skywalker is a direct reaction to what some people didn't like about Last Jedi. And I don't want to break down. Go ahead. Sorry, what, Eric?
No, that's saying that's why I thought Rise of Skywalker really let me down. I was so disappointed.
I don't love either of them, so I don't want to get too bogged down in that, because I've spoken at great length my feelings on Last Jedi, and I think that's just an example. Whatever you think of either or both of those movies, I do think that the Episode 9 is a reaction to Episode 8, and so you could do that with all of the prequels. But I was wondering, Eric, you mentioned that your kids, when they were younger, they would watch the prequels a lot. Did the character of Jar Jar resonate with a younger audience?
I think Alex, my older son, I think he used to talk about liking Jar Jar just to antagonize me. Which, by the way, I respect so much, because it truly means my DNA is in that child.
Oh, yes.
God help him.
Well, I was going to throw this out. Like,
go ahead.
I think there is a pattern. I think we have had enough time. There's 40 years now, 50 years of Star Wars where we have. I think there's a pattern for how a lot of this stuff works now. And look, when the prequels came out, people hated them. There wasn't social media at the time, but people hated them. Yeah. And even without social media, Jake Lloyd grew up like questioning everything, and Hayden Christensen didn't really act in anything else, and like
Ahmed Best.
Ahmed
Best.
Best.
Oh, the
I
poor
mean,
guy.
it's it's nuts. There's different problems with these trilogies, but the kids that grew up with them loved them, and now there's this resurgence of love for them. I really do think, like, quote it here, 10 years from now, people who grew up with these sequel trilogy are going to feel the same way. And I really do think, like, everything we've gotten over the past 10 years, we've gotten a Clone Wars show, Rebels show, we've gotten the Bad Batch, we've gotten Obi-Wan, we're going to get Andor. There's all this stuff around the prequels that has really like painted it, made it work. All these books, we're going to get that. We're already getting it for the sequel trilogy. Like Mandalorian, we're building to that. And
it's my Bon Jovi theory from earlier. It just, you stick around long enough, eventually people turn the corner.
People turn the corner, and I really do think that's going to happen with the sequel trilogy. It's a different type of ask, because I think a lot of prequel stuff is like good story, weird execution, and people have issues with like the sequel story. But I do think people will come around, and like I'm a guy who loves Last Jedi and then had a lot of issues with Rise of Skywalker, and I even would say I hated it for a while. But just this past year, I'm slowly starting to turn the corner. Like, yeah, there's some stuff I like in this, and like I'm starting to buy into it, and like.
One of the things to like about Rise of Skywalker is something that I meant to mention earlier about this episode, and we'll wrap up momentarily. Whenever we get Ian McDiarmid, I'm always like, thank God we have him a little bit. We don't have a lot of Emperor in this, but we had enough, and you could get somebody else to play him, and I'm glad they don't. You know what I mean?
And, talk about the luckiest character actor in the world. That guy had a long career. Star Wars was but a little piece of it, and then they say, hey, we're doing the prequels and you're going to be like the big bad. And I mean imagine that guy, how much money he made from those prequels, and then put that up against every other movie he did. He's been in a ton of stuff. He was even in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. You might remember that, Christian.
I do, yeah.
He was the butler.
Which is a great, if you don't know that movie, that's Michael Caine and Steve Martin, right?
Yeah, at their best. And
that's a great movie. Yeah,
that guy's been around forever, and it's like, oh my God, this little thing I did.
To get that call from his agent, it was like, hey, remember that thing you did like 16 years ago? Oh yeah, I was in a Star Trek movie. No, it was Star Wars. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm so embarrassed. They want you to play him again. I'm like, what? Didn't he die? No, we got
in a trilogy.
And the way that he underplays Senator Palpatine in the prequels, like when he's like,
great,
I'm so surprised. I'm surprised to be sure. And I'm just like, oh, this motherfucker. He's so good. I love him in the prequels. Even at my lowest appreciation for the prequels, I always thought he was fantastic. And when he gets like electrocuted and turns into way over the top, overacting, I'm like, I love this too, though. You know what I mean? I'm like, that'll happen.
It's a flavor. It's a flavor. Like I think, and it's like people are like, it's such a leap. He's in 9, and I'm like, I felt that way for a while. But then you're like, if there's one character who we know could do it, like I'm in. I don't really buy into like how, but like I'm in. Like
if they brought back Count Dooku with no head, that would have been a different thing.
Yeah, and I really do, like again, like it all connects in a cool way. Like Marvel, it's going like sequelizing one after the other, and this is like we're getting something up here, then back here, then here, and somehow it's all like dramatically really interesting. Like it was fascinating for this show to come out 15 years after the prequels, as opposed to like the year after. I think that's cool. Like there's something interesting about Star Wars being so like release out of order. It's really confusing for my parents, but for me, I think it's cool. And I really am like curious to see what we're going to get for that sequel era. And like, there's stuff in this show that mirrors like what Luke does in The Last Jedi. There's stuff throughout this series that touches the originals and the prequels. And I don't think any of the other series can say that.
Yeah, and but to the point that we're making, sort of him as an actor, it's also like, all right, you're gonna play him at this point in the timeline, and then you're gonna play him at this point in the timeline, and you're gonna go way back and play him. You know what I mean? It's like, And because they
Right.
reshot the scenes for Empire for the special editions, or no, the later editions, whatever, because it was
Right.
a different actor. And then they're like, no, we'll go ahead and put him in Empire as well. So yeah, just the amount of times it's like, yeah. But
Ian McDermott's like, yes, please, more.
yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
and sort of to the point about different generations appreciating different things about it. What I'll tell you is my son Felix, he's about to be 7. He keeps wanting to know when we're going to get to the porgs, because we have a
Love
couple of
them.
porgs in the house. And I'm like, yeah, that'll happen. You'll get to the porgs. Don't worry. We can't rush it. You'll get to the porgs. But
God.
to the point about how I've understood how kids could appreciate Jar Jar in a way that adults didn't. By the way, from the second time I saw the movie, he didn't bother me as much. First time, I'm like, what is this? What's going on? I'm really worried. From the second time, he's in it. You're like, all right, it's fine. But my son loved R2-D2.
Mhm.
When he gets shocked by the Jawas and he falls over with that thud, he laughed like,
oh, I laugh
Yeah.
every time at that.
he
still,
laughed
by the
like
way.
I was laughing at the Monty Python Dead Parrot sketch.
Yeah.
It was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. And he loves C-3PO and his like, no, this way is much too rocky. Just like just the two of them. And I'm like, yeah, that really works, And
Yeah.
so just you kind of forget what it is that kids are going to latch onto. He likes the characters, he pays attention to the story, he knows what's going on. That's just who he likes. And I'm like, yeah, I guess they are pretty great,
Yeah.
Well, Ryan Christian knows about this. I got to go to the academy, and I took my son, and for him to see the original, to see it in a theater, 70 millimeter.
God, I haven't even done that.
He was. I mean, it was such a treat, and I mean, true circle of
Chills.
life kind of crap. The first movie came out, I was 3, so I saw it in the theater,
God.
and many years back, my mom said to me at one point, like I was talking about how prequels were out, and Alex got into it, and he wanted all the toys, and I was complaining a little. My mom's like, "Good, you drove me nuts with that shit." So the circle of life of a child aggravating a parent.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about like, okay, I get it now, and I was like, all right, is it too late for an apology then for being annoying about it as a kid?
Well, it's about family. Like I really and that's the thing where we can just briefly talk about like the criticism reaction to the show, and I'm like, you guys, you have to go into this stuff realizing like, of course, like Leia's in it. Like I didn't know it was gonna be Leia, but like we all thought it was gonna be Luke. Like what's the difference? It's one of the like cool, and they're taking risks, and like that's the thing that's exciting about Star Wars is there's a lot you want to see, but you're like, oh, they're gonna like surprise me with something, and we're gonna get a moment where like Obi-Wan's dragged through fire, and how cool is that? Or he's gonna like launch gigantic rocks at him, and I'm gonna replay that moment for the rest of my life. Or we're gonna see Hayden Christensen behind the mask and have his voice go in and out of James Earl Jones back to Hayden while it's flashing blue and red, and tell him that he killed. It's like this is stuff we dreamt about. Like this is crazy.
Rogue One. So Rogue One has moments that clearly were made by a director who was a kid playing with the toys. Because we'd go to the beach and you'd bring the figures, and you might even bring your buddies at and you would play with them on the beach, and all of a sudden, what do we have? We have stormtroopers and AT-ATs on the beach. And so that's the fun thing. It's like, it's like the people making these stories now are the ones who grew up as fans, grew up as kids playing with this. So it's like, and provided they just trust them, those are the ones that you want. You want the ones where Star Wars was so in their life, because they get it. They get what makes us love this franchise still almost 50 years into it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's why when you bring somebody like Jon Favreau on board, it's because it was clearly so important to him. And he's like, I want to make stuff that I would appreciate just as a fan and just watching, so I get it, all of it. But yeah, ultimately it comes down to like stuff that you can watch with your kids. And I have you watched Rogue One with your kids, Eric? It's a little rough at the end, and also it's a bit of a downer.
Bit of a downer, right?
But your kids are bigger than mine, so it's all right.
Yeah, they They come from Hardy stock. Yeah,
I mean, if they've seen
they
Toxic
love
Avenger,
it.
they're fine. Anyway,
They did that we're gonna wait until Judah's bar mitzvah, I think.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
going to be
Oh,
a
cool.
very special day.
After the, and then the traditional, after the 8th day of Hanukkah, then the traditional viewing of Silent Night, Deadly Night, I believe, is the way things should go. And in any case, this is a great point from Dominicus Saxon. I've been able to see every movie on its original opening weekend. Wow. He was 7 when Star Wars came out. I was 1 when Star Wars came out. I do remember seeing the re-release at the drive-in. And I always talk about the reason I remember it. I have a memory from being 3 years old. It was because I really had to go to the bathroom and my dad didn't want to take me, but my mom made him get out of the car and take me. But he was like, it was like, really, I was in there and my dad was still watching the movie, but you couldn't hear it because you didn't have the little box in your window to listen. But anyway, so it just because it's meant so much to me for so long. And I feel like this show delivered. Yeah, it's not the amazing,
not masterpiece.
Holy shit moments of The Mandalorian, but there's so much that I really enjoyed and it was fun. And I look forward to watching it with my kids. I think that they'll both be able to relate to this 10-year-old Leia. This idea of like, well, I wasn't gonna put a blaster in it. You're only 10, and it's like she's probably thinking like, all right, well, I'll have one by the time I'm 12, so it'll be fine. But in any case, and even when people don't agree, I love being able to talk about this stuff. That's one of the best parts of doing the Bladtcast for almost a decade. Having this be our 497th episode. We have a couple of fun things coming up over the next few weeks. We will do a special on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which has renewed my faith in that franchise by giving me exactly what I wanted and not something that we've been getting from Star Trek. We'll have some familiar faces on that. We'll have a Thor Love and Thunder special, which will include a conversation that Eric and I still need to schedule, but you guys will hear it soon because we did see it last night. And we will also very soon have Bladtcast 500. And I confirmed earlier today, joining me for Bladtcast episode 500 will be the one, the only, the great Mr. Dana Carvey.
Yes,
so I'm very excited for that.
You bagged the whale.
Yeah, he told me that he's very busy the next few weeks, but he would love to do it. So we'll slowly roll out 498, 499, but
can you do like fractions? Like a 498.1.
Oh yeah, like a
7-minute episode.
Did they do like Lion King 1.5?
Yeah.
And they did like an X-Men 1.5. Yeah, so we'll do 499 and 3/4 or whatever.
Jackass.
But anyway, so very excited to look. It's a lot of nerd talk over the next few weeks, but excited to have it with all of you. And Ryan, if people want to continue the conversation, follow you on social media, talk about how Bruce Springsteen's going on tour in Europe next year, but yet no US dates. How do they find you and how do they do that?
At Ryan Nilsen, RYNILSEN on Twitter, and at Ryan Nilsen _ on Instagram. Worked on a ton of cool stuff that's coming out right now and later this year, so you can keep track of all that. Where can they find you guys?
Eric, where can people find you?
Well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to the idea of the prequel, the Bladtcast prequel, which I want you to do that episode so badly.
Episode -1. That's actually really, you know what? That's our friend Jacob Lee Downey. And that's actually a great idea. I would like to do it. We've done I don't want to waste too much time, but we've done episodes of the Bladtcast that are called Flash Blatt. And the premise of those episodes are that we did the Bladtcast decades ago.
When you were like in high school?
When we were, we did them decades ago and they existed as cassettes that people would pass between each other. So there's a Bladtcast. Like my idea was Bladtcast 92 was the first one. I think it's episode 192. And then we think we did an 83 and then we did a 99. And so these are episodes that were recorded in the year that is in the title. And there'd be a way to figure out how to do -1.
Oh my God.
In any case,
Bladtcast babies.
So people can find you at Count Eric Connor. They can always find us on Marvel Movie Talk Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And this Sunday over on the Geekscape Network for Geekscape Book Club, where we'll be talking about the George Perez Wonder Woman Volume 1, which I've only read about 100 pages of so far, so I really have to delve into the next 200.
You're 100 pages ahead of me, so I got to get to it.
It's like 300 pages, and
Jesus.
It's a lot.
All right. I'll make it work.
You should get started.
Yes, sir.
But you can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. Please subscribe to the Bladtcast YouTube channel. You get all of our shows. And of course, at Bladtcast on Twitter and Instagram. That's all the time we have for now. But as we always like to say, may the force be with you. Live long and prosper. And as the great Stan Lee would say, Excelsior.